This is kind of perverse, if you ask me. So the Democrats right now are trying to sort of reverse the whole blame game thing. They're looking at Georgia and they're worried about Georgia because it looks like Trump's going to win Georgia. So they can't allow that to happen. So what do? They start talking about, oh, somebody's stealing votes. Interestingly enough, I'm allowed to say this. I do believe I'm allowed to say this right now on YouTube because it used to be that you couldn't actually mention these words. And then they came out with an edict saying, no, you can talk about this now. Well, that's good, right? Because the Democrats want to talk about this. Funny how that works. So down in Georgia, they're talking about none other than Donald Trump possibly stealing the election. And you got to be so careful because, oh, those conservatives are all about voter suppression. How dare they ask you for a license when you go to vote? I mean, if you want to go to a Kamala Harris rally, you got to show a license, but you're welcome to go vote with no proof of identification at all. Stacey Abrams over on, of course, MSNBC talking about this exact issue. Watch.
I mean, it's. I hear your optimism and I hear your deep and enthusiastic support for the ticket. I wonder though if if you could put on your voting access hat for a second, if you could talk to me about your level of trepidation about actual election day, given the fact that I believe the Georgia legislature, the election board in Georgia, just passed 2 rules, one of which allows election officials, some of whom are very magnified and are election deniers themselves, to arbitrarily refuse to certify election results and therefore, opens the door to a lot of chicanery in terms of certifying the statewide results. What's your level of concern about that as we barrel towards election day?
It's deep concern, but it's a deep concern that I've held for several years. This is Brian Kemp's baby. This is his state election board. He signed the laws that have given this elections board the ability to run amok, to refuse to not only certify elections, but to enable mass challenges at the county level. We have a Secretary of State that has a cancel your voter registration website that is unfortunately violated access to data privacy at least once that we know of. And so I want us to understand that the fight in Georgia is a fight to protect and defend the right to vote. I'm so proud of the work that Fair Fight continues to do, working with allies across the state and around the country to lift up what's at stake. I'm not optimistic. I am determined. I believe that we can get this done because we've done it before. And we didn't do so ignoring the reality of voter suppression. We did so by calling it out, by confronting it, by making certain that voters understood all of their rights, and by doing what we could to raise public alarm. And while this is happening in Georgia, we've got to be watching states across the country that are going to face similar challenges. Voter suppression remains one of the top tools that Republicans use in order to win elections. And we've got to push back by demanding free and fair elections where we can. And so while I am very bullish on the capacity of Vice President Harris to win Georgia, I know it's only going to happen if we do the work necessary to raise the alarm, but also to hold accountable Governor Kemp, Secretary of State Raffensperger, and that state election board that wants to have the ability without impunity, to actually decertify election
results. Okay, we got to
cut
her off.
This is not
I can only take so much in one day. I mean, first price controls from Kamala Harris, and then this insanity from the likes of Stacey Abrams, who, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, this is the woman who wouldn't actually admit that she didn't win Georgia. Right? Like that was the whole, she basically pulled a Trump before Trump ever was willing to, she still insists that whole thing was rigged and that somehow she won Georgia and she never conceded. And guess what? She got a cover article in the New York Times Weekend magazine. Double standard. You think? I think. So that's Stacey Abrams trying to use what Trump is fairly, in my estimation, arguing, which is that, you're not really getting a fair shot here because there's a lot of people conspiring against you. I mean, hey, you don't even have to have an ID to vote. And Kamala's bringing in some 10, well, we don't know exactly the numbers, millions of migrants across the border. Guess what? You're going to have problems. You will, but they don't want you to see that. They don't want you to look at that. They just want you to feel good, right? Like just feel good because George Clooney likes her. So you should too, right? No, you shouldn't. And they picked Tim Waltz because, he's a white guy. And maybe you'll feel something simpatico with him because he's a white guy. who eats white man tacos. Tacos. However you want to say it. He'd probably say tacos. Let's take a look at this soundbite, a little clip from a commercial that Kamala's team, you wonder why she wasn't doing any campaigning. She was busy shooting a commercial with Tim Waltz. It's a 9-minute whopper, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to show you a few seconds. Take a peek.
I talk about it being halftime in America. We're a touchdown down, and I kind of like the idea of being a little bit behind.
Well, I'm looking at Coach Waltz right now. I'm looking at Coach Waltz.
Like I have white guy tacos and
What is
like
that?
black,
Like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
pretty much ground beef and cheese.
That's
and,
okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No.
Oh.
Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota.
And then she offered him some cantaloupes. I'm laughing too much. Because you know what? You got to keep a sense of humor about these things. We have two people that are socialist, bordering on socialist dictators, communist dictators, trying to win the most important offices in this land. And that's actually frightening. Really frightening.